after Dorian slams into the Carolinas, into the Outer Banks. Families trapped, surrounded by water. Rob Marciano in the path. He's standing by with the new track. And the humanitarian crisis unfolding in the Bahamas right now. Also developing tonight, new deaths linked to vaping, the numbers growing. Where the newest cases have been reported, and tonight the CDC now investigating what authorities are now saying and the new warning tonight. Just in, actress Felicity Huffman responding to the new recommendation in the college cheating scandal that she serve a month behind bars. Tonight, what Huffman is now asking for instead. The letter in her defense signed by dozens. And her former Desperate Housewives co-star Eva Longoria with her own plea. Authorities say the American Airlines jet sabotaged before takeoff. Pilots noticing a problem just before taking off, 150 passengers on board. A mechanic now under arrest. The breaking headline involving the Navy SEALs tonight, 3 top leaders of SEAL Team 7 have been relieved of duty. Martha Raddatz standing by with late reporting. The ex-Marine facing charges tonight, authorities, and what they say they discovered in his truck. They believe they found a mass shooting threat. The deadly fall at Yosemite tonight, the woman who fell while climbing at a popular site. And the 74-year-old woman making news tonight after giving birth to twins.
This is ABC World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening. It's great to have you with us here on this very busy Friday night. And we begin tonight with the rescues underway right now. After days of saying it could happen, Hurricane Dorian has in fact made landfall in the U.S. on North Carolina's Outer Banks. At this hour, Dorian remains a monster storm. You see it there. Its cloud cover stretching up the coast and past Maine, triggering dangerous winds and blinding rain. Dorian slamming ashore with 90-mile-an-hour winds and a powerful storm surge. Catastrophic flooding tonight on Ocracoke Island. And at this hour, a desperate effort underway to rescue hundreds who are now trapped. The wind and tornadoes from the storm leaving a trail of damage and hundreds of thousands without power as we come on tonight. And it's not over yet. We have the new track into this evening, and yes, again tomorrow. And ABC's Stephanie Ramos is in Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina, where the eye passed through and where the emergency rescues are now underway tonight.
Tonight, Hurricane Dorian making landfall in the Outer Banks.
So pouring in.
Winds gusting over 100 miles per hour and dumping nearly 14 inches of rain.
This is a flash flood emergency for Ocracoke Island.
Ocracoke Island, the hardest hit area. Rain colliding with storm surge. First responders choppering in to help the estimated 800 people who did not evacuate.
We didn't know it was going to be this bad.
The hurricane lashing much of North Carolina's Outer Banks.
The wind has been howling here for hours. You can see the grass on these dunes being pushed sideways. Even the shingles on that house flying off.
Our Rob Marciano measuring the power of those gusts.
Winds gusting to 77 miles per hour now. Coming off the sound, we got sound, surge, flooding, debris and water covering this road. We're still 4 hours from high tide.
And we're seeing new images of the destruction from more than 20 reported tornadoes on Thursday. Emerald Isle residents trying to salvage what they can. This as utility crews race to restore power across the region. At one point, more than 375,000 in the dark.
Stephanie Ramos with us live tonight from Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina. Stephanie, we saw so many homes damaged there today, and you were telling us that pier right behind you there suffered major damage too.
David, so much damage that most of the pier is gone. The end of one of the oldest and best loved fishing piers by locals and visitors here washed away. Big pieces of the Avalon Pier have washed up on beaches just north of here, but that's 75 feet of pier just gone. Proof of just how powerful the wind and rain was that rolled through here, David.
All right, Stephanie, thank you. Meteorologist Rob Marciano was reporting in all day. He, too, was in the eye of the storm, and so let's get right back to Rob tonight. He's in Nags Head, North Carolina, and Rob, it's not over yet.
No, it's not done, David. Dorian, you can see the wind still pushing waves over this highway behind me. Still a healthy hurricane. Offshore, we see it on the satellite picture here. Now it's picking up steam. Northeasterly movement, 24 miles per hour, but still 90-mile-per-hour winds just south of Nantucket by about 300 miles. And we have tropical storm warnings there. And for parts of New England, coastal flood advisories, Virginia Beach to Atlantic City, potentially making landfall as a Category 2 tomorrow in Nova Scotia. But we still have U.S. impacts to deal with in the way of wind and water. Tonight, overnight, we're looking for it to be abreast of Nantucket Nantucket by tomorrow morning. A windy day for the Cape and Islands, potentially over 60 miles an hour. Definitely dangerous along U.S. beaches, but our friends in Canada will feel the brunt of Dorian next. David?
The hurricane that will not go away. Rob, our thanks to you again tonight. And we cannot forget the humanitarian disaster unfolding in the Bahamas. Families who have lost everything, and the death toll is expected to grow. And tonight, the images here, an entire family being rescued from their attic, where they rode out the hurricane, a Category 5 at the time. They waited a long time for help. ABC's Marcus Moore is still in the Bahamas tonight.
Tonight, the humanitarian crisis in parts of the Bahamas deepening. The docks in Abaco teeming with the anguished.
All women and children follow the lady who was in the front.
The hospitals overrun. And at Marsh Harbor's airport, families with their few remaining belongings desperately trying to evacuate.
It's horrible. You can't live here.
We landed at that airport today with Customs and Border Protection and search and rescue teams.
The fact that they have this back partially running is a great thing for this area's recovery.
There are thousands possibly missing here. Bahamian officials warning, prepare for a death toll that could be, quote, unimaginable and staggering. Many victims still underneath piles of debris. The stench of death in the air in some places. We met this woman. She owned a restaurant this time last week. Now she's homeless.
What are you going to do next?
I have no idea. I have no idea. It's just like we're starting all over again. It's just sad.
At another airport on the island, we saw hundreds, including pregnant women, with little food and no shelter from the heat. So many now starting to deal with the trauma of surviving a nightmare.
People in the attic, man. Shame the people look here.
This family pulled out from an attic after their house was submerged.
This is terrible. This is terrible. Look at the people, man.
This man deciding to walk with his daughter after sleeping in his ceiling for 2 days.
So keep us in prayer of your Bahamas strong.
Prayers for Bahamas again tonight. Marcus Moore joins us live. He's now back in Nassau, where so many of these evacuees are being brought. And Marcus, I know the U.S. military is now planning to expand their relief operations.
Yeah, David, the NORTHCOM commander, General O'Shaughnessy, just a short time ago telling reporters that U.S. military assets will be used to get the affected airports and seaports back up and running, and most of the relief flights will be staged out of nearby Florida. The general also promising that much-needed aid will be delivered to those who need it. David.
Marcus, thank you again tonight. To other news this Friday, the alarming medical headline tonight, the number of deaths linked to vaping rising today. At least 5 people have now died, and there are hundreds of new cases of lung illness now under investigation. Tonight, ABC's Steve Osunsami is in Atlanta, where the CDC is now investigating, and there is a new warning tonight.
Say A, B,
24-year-old J.D. Hernandez is one of the now hundreds of Americans suddenly struggling to breathe, and his doctors tell his family that his troubles started when he began using e-cigarettes 6 months ago. Tonight, a machine is breathing for him, and he's fighting for his life.
It's very hurtful to see your child in so much pain and not be able to help him.
In a briefing today, the CDC confirms recent deaths linked to vaping and says it's investigating 450 cases of serious lung illness across 33 states. The government says that while many of the patients, but not all, reported recent use of THC-containing products, the active chemical in marijuana, some reported using both THC and nicotine. They're also investigating whether the illnesses may be related to specific devices, other ingredients, possible contaminants, or more than one of the above.
This is really impacting a very vulnerable population, and we really encourage people to avoid these products.
Adam Hergenrieder used both nicotine and THC.
My lungs feel like they're being crushed by like 20 pounds.
He was hospitalized this week.
I'm 18 years old. My lungs are like a 70-year-old's.
Late today, a 5th death was connected to vaping, this one from Los Angeles County, California.
And Steve Osunsami with us tonight live in Atlanta. And Steve, there's growing concern about these numbers, of course, and it was only a matter of time. Members of Congress are now pushing for action, too.
Yes, David, lawmakers are starting to speak up. In fact, tonight at least one U.S. senator is calling on the commissioner of the FDA to either do something about this or step down. David?
Steve Osunsami on this again for us. Thank you, Steve. Just in tonight, actress Felicity Huffman now responding after the new recommendations in the college cheating scandal. Prosecutors recommending the actress serve a month behind bars. Tonight, what Huffman is now asking for instead. She's offered a letter, too, signed by dozens on her behalf, and a former co-star from Desperate Housewives with her own plea for Huffman. Here's ABC's Adrienne Bankert now.
Tonight, federal prosecutors say that actress Felicity Huffman deserves to serve prison time for her role in the largest college admission scam ever. The actress pleading guilty to conspiracy to commit mail fraud after paying $15,000 to help arrange for her daughter to take the SAT test at a controlled location. Prosecutors not mincing words, saying she should serve 1 month behind bars and that neither probation nor home confinement in a large home in the Hollywood Hills with an infinity pool would constitute meaningful punishment or deter others from committing similar crimes. Adding, her efforts were not driven by need or desperation, but by a sense of entitlement or at least moral cluelessness facilitated by wealth and insularity.
You asking for a bribe?
You pretending you're above that?
Attorneys for Huffman write she is remorseful, indeed deeply ashamed about what she did. Her attorneys request that she be punished with 1 year probation, 250 hours of community service, plus a $20,000 fine. Her husband, William H. Macy, and her former Desperate Housewives co-star, Eva Longoria, writing in her support.
Adrienne Bankert with us from California tonight, and we know that Felicity Huffman will find out if she has to serve prison time in the coming days, Adrienne?
Yes, that's correct, David. Sentencing is set for this same time next week. Huffman is the first of dozens of parents charged in the alleged scam scheduled to be sentenced. Another actress, Lori Loughlin, is set to go to trial. David?
Adrienne Bankert tonight. Adrienne, thank you. We're going to turn now to news from the Pentagon and word tonight that 3 top leaders of the elite Navy SEAL Team 7 have been relieved of duty. I want to bring in ABC's Chief Global Affairs Correspondent Martha Raddatz tonight. And Martha, this comes after the entire platoon had already been sent home from Iraq.
They were, David. The platoon was sent home after allegations of sexual assault and heavy drinking. These 3 leaders fired today are not themselves accused of engaging in that behavior, but the Navy says they bear responsibility for those under their command. This is not the only SEAL team that has faced serious accusations of late. Others were investigated for cocaine use and additional issues. The head of the Navy SEALs acknowledged last month that his community has a problem, but vows to fix it. This may be a first step because it is very rare for SEAL team leaders to be fired like this. David?
All right, Martha Raddatz with us on a Friday night. Martha, thank you. Meantime, a former Marine is under arrest in Houston tonight after he was pulled over for not having a license plate on his truck. But it's what they say they found inside his truck that set off major red flags: an illegal silencer, an AR-style assault rifle, and literature about school shootings. Here's ABC's Chief Justice Correspondent Pierre Thomas now.
Tensions quickly rose at this traffic stop in Houston, Texas, when police say they discovered an assault-style rifle fitted with a silencer and tactical sniper gear. Tonight, 28-year-old Rick Montiavo is being held on $200,000 bond for a weapons charge. Authorities urgently investigate if he poses a threat. They claim he also had disturbing writings about school shootings.
They say I'm the white boy who shoots up schools, unquote, along with poems talking about death.
At his detention hearing, Montiavo, a former Marine, claiming it's all a misunderstanding.
I worked private security. That's the reason why for all that year, and I explained that to everyone that was there.
But prosecutors claim Montiavo has an extensive history of mental illness.
Frankly, just the kind of case that everyone hopes that we find before something horrible happens.
David, since the El Paso massacre, ABC News has documented more than 14 cases where police have arrested suspects accused of plotting or expressing a desire to conduct mass attacks. David?
Pierre Thomas with us tonight. Thank you, Pierre. It was last night here as we came on the air that we reported on that out-of-control wildfire coming dangerously close to homes in Southern California. Tonight here we see the images how close this was for so many. Here's Clayton Sandell.
Tonight, firefighters are nervously watching these hills in Southern California, where an unpredictable 2,000-acre blaze still has a community on edge. In Murrieta, southeast of Los Angeles, flames came within inches of homes. Air tankers dropping strategic loads of pink fire retardant to stop the fire's advance. Last night, retired firefighter John Samarin refused to evacuate, he and his son standing their ground, as massive flames came racing downhill.
Was there ever a moment when you're watching these 75-foot flames come in that you're thinking, this may not work?
There was. I was praying hard.
And in Northern California, the 6,000-acre Red Bank fire now forcing evacuations.
If CAL FIRE comes and tells you to evacuate,